Lena adjusted the strap of her worn leather bag and glanced nervously at the government office counter. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the room smelled faintly of ink and dust. She clutched a folder to her chest, heart pounding. This wasn't how she imagined her marriage. It was supposed to be a formality, a paper arrangement, a rushed, bureaucratic solution to protect her friend who had asked for a favor. A small mix-up with documents to keep him in the country. No love, no commitment. Just a signature. But the man standing beside her wasn't her friend. She blinked at the unfamiliar name on the document, Jung Min. The clerk smiled without looking up. You're all set. Congratulations to the newlyweds. Lena's jaw dropped. Wait, what? The man beside her, tall, quiet, dressed in simple clothes and a dark cap, didn't flinch. He signed the final line calmly and handed the pen back. Lena turned to him. You're not Chen Wei. He finally looked at her. His eyes were deep and unreadable. No, he said, but the name on the certificate is mine. She blinked in shock, searching his face. There must be some mistake. I was supposed to marry someone else. Just a paperwork thing. The clerk sighed. Sorry, but once the license is registered, it's official. If there was a mix-up, you'll need to file for annulment separately. Next. The line moved behind them. Lena stood frozen. What is going on? She whispered. Jung Min looked at her again, his expression unreadable. You signed it? Her mind raced. She had signed it without checking the name carefully, trusting the rushed process. She stepped outside, dazed. The cold air bit at her skin. He followed her. Why were you even there? She asked. He shrugged. I was helping a friend too. Looks like the wrong papers got swapped. She stared at him in disbelief. So now we're married. Just like that? He nodded once, calm to calm. Yes. She let out a shaky breath. This can't be happening. He looked at her for a long moment. If you want to fix it, we can go back tomorrow. File the paperwork. King, make it go away. She swallowed hard. Do you want to? He paused. Not really. Her eyes widened. Before she could respond, he pulled out a card and handed it to her. If you change your mind, call me. Until then, Mrs. Jiang. He walked away, leaving her standing in the middle of the sidewalk, a wife to a man she had never met. A marriage that never should have happened. But fate had just rewritten her story with one signature. Lena paced the length of her tiny apartment, phone clutched in her hand, heart still racing. How had this happened? One moment she was doing a favor for a friend. The next, she was legally married to a complete stranger. She glanced down at the marriage certificate again, half expecting the name to change if she stared hard enough. But there it was, Jiang Min. She barely knew the man. Yet now, on paper, they were husband and wife. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. She opened it, and there he stood. Same quiet expression, same casual clothes. A simple duffel bag slung over his shoulder. You followed me? She asked, narrowing her eyes. You put your address on the registration form, he said calmly. They filed it publicly, she sighed. Okay, but why are you here? He looked down at the duffel bag, then back at her. No place to stay. Just until we sort this out. She crossed her arms. You're unbelievable. You're the one who married me, he said, almost amused. She huffed and stepped aside. Fine couch. 2 days. Then we filed to cancel it. He nodded and walked in. Her apartment was barely enough for one person. A single room with a kitchenette. A bathroom that barely fit a tub. and a couch that had seen better days. But Jiang Min didn't complain. He placed his bag down, removed his shoes, and sat on the edge of the couch. "Thank you," he said, voice low. Li Na rubbed her forehead. "This is a nightmare." He said nothing. She brought him a glass of water and tossed a pillow his way. "You can sleep here. Just don't touch anything." That night, Li Na tried to sleep, but the silence in the room was too loud. She peeked over the edge of her bed and saw him lying on the couch. One arm behind his head, eyes open. "Still awake?" she asked quietly. "Yes." "What kind of guy agrees to marry a stranger?" He turned his head slightly. "The kind who doesn't believe in accidents." She didn't know how to respond. The next morning, she found the kitchen clean, her dishes washed, and a note by the kettle. Went to look for work. Back by dinner. JM. She stared at it. Who was this man? He had no job, no home. Yet he moved like someone completely unfazed by the chaos. And somehow, that scared her more than the mistake they had made. 2 weeks. That's how long Jiang Min had stayed in Li Na's apartment. 2 weeks of awkward silences, shared takeout, and mismatched routines. But something had shifted. Li Na wasn't sure when it started, maybe the morning she found a fresh cup of tea waiting for her on the table. Or the evening he came home soaked from job hunting and still offered to take out the trash. Without being asked, he didn't talk much. But when he did, his words stayed with her. Like when she complained about her job. "People treat me like I'm invisible," she muttered one night, slumped over the kitchen counter. He didn't look up from peeling vegetables. "They don't see you because you shine in places they've never looked." She blinked at him. Unexpectedly poetic. He shrugged. Just honest. That night, she caught herself smiling at his quiet confidence. On the third Sunday, she came home to find him making dumplings from scratch. "Where did you learn to cook like that?" she asked. "My grandmother." She said, "Flour is cheaper than pride." Li Na laughed, and for the first time since the marriage mess began, she forgot they were strangers. They ate in silence, but it was a comfortable one. Later, he noticed her rubbing her wrist. "You're hurt?" he asked. "Just tired. Long shift. Heavy trays." Without asking, he stood, walked over, and gently took her hand in his. He didn't say anything. Just massaged the tension from her wrist with quiet precision. She stared at his face. There was something calm in him, solid, like the world could fall apart. And he'd remain steady. "Thank you," she said, softer than she intended. He met her eyes. "You don't have to thank me. We're married, remember?" She rolled her eyes, trying to mask her fluster. "Don't remind me." But she didn't pull her hand away. That night, she dreamed of dumplings and tea. Of quiet hands and soft smiles. Of the way he looked at her, like he saw something she hadn't seen in herself yet. The next morning, when she found another cup of tea waiting, she didn't question it. She just smiled. And for the first time, she didn't want to file for annulment anymore. The apartment was too quiet. Li Na stirred her soup, absent-mindedly, glancing at the clock on the wall. 7:43 p.m. Jiang Min. Usually returned by 6 o'clock. Always punctual. Always carrying something. Groceries, takeout. Or a strange news story from his job hunt. But tonight, he was late. Very late. She told herself not to worry. Maybe he stayed out longer. Maybe he got lucky and found work. But something in her chest felt off. At 9 o'clock, she texted him. No reply. By 10:30, the soup had gone cold. She stared at the door, arms wrapped around herself. When morning came, the apartment was still empty. She rushed to the station he usually passed through. She called hospitals. Even walked to the alley behind the convenience store, where he often waited for her. After shifts, no sign. On the third day, she opened the closet to look for something, and her breath caught. His side was empty. The few clothes he had left were gone. His duffel bag missing. The pillow folded. The blanket stacked neatly on the couch. On the kitchen table, a single note. "Thank you for everything." No explanation. No goodbye. Lena sat at the table, the note in her hands, tears pooling in her eyes. What had they been to each other? Strangers? Roommates? Something more? She replayed the past weeks over and over in her mind. The tea, the dumplings, the quiet glances. Had it meant something only to her? Had he been pretending all along? Her chest ached, but not with rage. With disappointment, she walked through the apartment like a ghost that day, touching the spaces he had made feel like home. The cushion he favored. The cup he used every morning. She had let her guard down. She had started to hope. And now, like every other dream she dared believe in, he was gone. That night, she sat in the dark, staring at the note. 3 words. 3 impossible words. "Thank you for everything." As if he had meant to say goodbye with gratitude instead of presence. As if that could be enough. Lena didn't sleep. She just waited not for him to come back, but for the part of her that went quiet when he left, to come back instead. 6 months had passed. Lena no longer flinched when someone said his name. Not that anyone did. She still had the note, tucked between pages of a cookbook she never opened anymore. Life had continued, quietly, predictably. She now worked as a part-time assistant at a major events agency. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid better than the restaurant. Most days were filled with paperwork, floral arrangements, and staying invisible behind the scenes. Until today. The agency had been hired to coordinate a massive corporate conference at the Grand Phoenix Hotel, the biggest event of the season. Her manager barked orders through the headset as Lena carried coffee trays and handed out folders, trying to stay out of the way of polished executives and their even more polished entourages. She moved quickly toward the VIP conference hall, balancing 3 iced coffees in one hand and a folder in the other. Then she looked up, and her world stopped. At the end of the corridor stood a tall man in a charcoal suit. Surrounded by assistants and flashing cameras, sharp jawline, confident posture, familiar silence in the way he held his expression. Jiang Min. Not in worn sneakers or a borrowed hoodie, but in sleek leather shoes, cufflinks, a tailored suit with his initials embroidered on the sleeve. She froze. A nearby screen flashed. "Welcome, Jiang Min, CEO of Mintech Global." CEO. Her throat tightened. Before she could move, he turned, and their eyes met. He stopped mid-sentence. Their gazes locked across the polished floor. Past the executives and lights and titles. His expression didn't change. But his eyes. They burned with something she hadn't seen before. Guilt, longing, shock. Lena blinked, unsure whether to drop the tray or throw it. He took a step toward her. She turned on her heel and ran back through the service hall, out of the spotlight, out of the building. Her breath came in short gasps, her hands trembling. He was the CEO. All this time, he had disappeared from her life, like a ghost, and returned as a man who could have had anything, but never told her the truth. She leaned against the wall of the alley behind the hotel, trying to catch her breath, but her thoughts were louder than her heartbeat. He had lied. He had vanished. And now he was back. And everything she thought she knew about him was a carefully folded illusion. The hospital room was quiet, filled with soft beeps and the faint scent of antiseptic. Lena sat by the small crib near the window, gently rocking the baby in her arms. A tiny hand reached up, clutching her finger. The child cooed softly, unaware of the storm building just outside the door. She hummed a lullaby, the same one her mother used to sing. As the nurse stepped out quietly, leaving her alone, but not for long. A knock echoed. Before she could answer, the door opened slowly. And there he was, Jung Min. Dressed simply this time, no suit, no entourage, just quiet eyes and unspoken words. Lena froze, heart hammering. He looked from her to the crib. His steps faltered. Lena. She turned her face away, rocking the baby gently. How did you find me? Your co-worker. She said you had a family emergency. I didn't mean to. Then, don't stay. Her voice was cold, but her grip on the baby tightened. He took one more step forward. Then, he saw him. The baby eyes half open, lips curled in a tiny yawn. A shock of dark hair and the same serious brow that Jung Min had seen in the mirror for years. He stopped breathing. Is he? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her silence spoke volumes. You didn't tell me, he said softly. Lena stood, placing the baby gently back in the crib. You left. Without a word. What was I supposed to do? Chase you down with a pregnancy test in hand? He flinched. I didn't know who I was back then. Everything was a mess. I thought disappearing was the best way to protect you. She turned to face him, fury behind the tears brimming in her eyes. You think abandonment is protection. He lowered his gaze. No, I know now it was cowardice. A beat of silence. Then, timidly, he stepped closer to the crib. The baby stirred, eyes blinking open. Jung Min stared, not as a CEO. Not as the man who had vanished, but as someone utterly broken by what he saw. He looks like you, he whispered. Lena looked at her son. He has your silence. Jawoon looked up at her. What's his name? She hesitated. Then quietly, Jin. Tears welled in his eyes. I want to know him. If you'll let me. Lena studied him, the man who once slept on her couch. Who ate her dumplings, who disappeared without goodbye, and returned as someone entirely different, yet somehow still the same. This isn't about what you want, she said. It's about what he needs. She stepped past him. And what he needs is someone who doesn't run. Rain fell over the city like a confession. Jung Min stood on the rooftop of his company's headquarters. Not to feel powerful, but to feel small. The wind tugged at his coat, but he barely noticed. His thoughts were elsewhere. Every step he had taken in the last few days had led him back to one undeniable truth. He had broken something precious. Not a contract. A family. He had vanished from Lena's life without explanation, without courage, and now that he'd seen his son, held his tiny hand for just 1 second. He couldn't breathe without that image replaying in his mind. He called her a pro. No answer. He texted nothing. Until finally, he stopped asking and started walking. The rain soaked through his clothes as he stood in front of her building, waiting. She stepped out hours later with an umbrella in one hand and a diaper bag in the other. Their eyes met. She didn't stop walking. He followed. Lena, please, he said, breathless. She didn't respond. He caught up, blocking her path. Just 1 minute. That's all I ask. She stared at him, tired and soaked, but strong. What could you possibly say now that would make any of this okay? He dropped to his knees in the middle of the sidewalk. People stared. Hours passed. But Jung Min didn't move. He looked up at her, rain dripping from his hair. "There's no apology good enough for what I did," he said. "I left because I thought I didn't deserve you. I was afraid you'd find out who I really was. And walk away first." She shook her head, furious and heartbroken. "I didn't need you to be rich. I needed you to stay." His voice cracked. "I failed. But I want to be different now. For you, for Jin." She stood silent, water dripping from her umbrella, mascara running down her cheeks. "Why now?" "Because I saw his eyes. And I saw everything I missed." He reached into his coat and pulled out the scarf she once lent him on the night they met. Folded and dry. "This kept me warm when I had nothing. Just like you did." She stared at it. Her breath caught. A memory, a feeling, a truth. She bent down and took the scarf. Not as a sign of forgiveness, but as a sign of remembrance. "This doesn't mean we're okay," she whispered. "I know," he replied. "But maybe it means I still have a chance to try." And in the pouring rain, on a street full of strangers, a man who had everything knelt before the woman, who had given him something money could never buy. A home. The seasons had changed again. Cherry blossoms fluttered gently through the air as spring returned to the city, soft, pink, and full of second chances. Li Na stood in the park, beneath the same tree she used to sit under alone when life felt too heavy. But now, she wasn't alone. Gin toddled through the grass nearby, giggling, holding a balloon shaped like a star. And beside her stood Jung Min, not in a suit, not in a disguise, just him in a simple shirt, holding a bottle of juice in one hand and a diaper bag in the other, looking every bit the father he had once been too afraid to be. "He's fast," Jung Min said, eyes on their son. "Just like you," Li Na replied, smiling softly. They watched Jin stumble, then get back up without a single tear. Just like they had. It hadn't been easy. There had been late-night arguments, long silences, slow healing. Trust didn't return in a day. It came back in pieces. A laugh, a shared memory, a quiet gesture when no one else was watching. Jung Min had started showing up. Not with flowers, but with diapers. Not with grand speeches, but with presence. And somehow, that had meant more. That day in the park, he turned to her, holding a small velvet box. She tensed. "We're already legally married, remember?" He opened it anyway. Inside wasn't a ring, but a handwritten letter. She blinked, surprised. He cleared his throat. "I never asked you to marry me. Not really. That day. It was all wrong. This time, I want to do it right." She opened the letter. "Lena, I once disappeared because I thought I wasn't worthy of your love. I came back because I realized your love was the only thing that ever made me want to be better. You gave me a son, a home, a reason. If you'll still have me, not as the man who left, but as the man who's ready to stay, I'll spend every day proving it to you." She lowered the letter, tears brimming in her eyes. Jung Min knelt, not out of tradition, but out of sincerity. "Will you choose me?" Again, for real this time. She didn't speak. Instead, she reached down and pulled him to his feet, wrapping her arms around him. "Only if you never call me Mrs. Jiang in public again." He laughed, and it echoed like sunlight. Jin clapped his hands nearby, not understanding why his parents were suddenly holding each other, but happy all the same. The three of them stood beneath the blooming tree, the breeze carrying petals across the grass like a blessing. Not a perfect family, but a real one. And this time, built not by mistake, but by love.